So if you're like 23 or in your 20s at all, please know you have decades if you're smart in this game. And not only in this game just to hang around, but be in your prime. I think that's so important because that'll slow people down. That'll save a lot of injuries from kids too, because they feel like, oh, I gotta push this hard. I gotta get there. You don't need to get anywhere yet. You need to just slow down and get and let the volume accrue over time, which is the most important thing. Being in the gym and not injured is the most important thing in bodybuilding for an athlete. So if you could do that, you're in good shape.
I'm really glad you brought that up. So you mentioned you had some pre-existing injuries that sometimes get flared up from time to time. You want to speak to that? How did they happen, and how do you adjust when they do pop up with the amount of training that you're doing? Like, do you have to substitute certain exercises? Maybe you want to give like an example. I think it can help just give some perspective for the listeners to let them know, like, hey, if you're going through something, you're obviously not alone. And even the champs, the best of the best, they have to work around things, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question, man. So I'll just start out with like minor things. Like from time to time, like I'll strain my adductor, I'll strain my shoulder sometimes. These are minor things that I could work around. So let's say like a dumbbell lateral is aggravating like a minor strain in my shoulder, but an upright row feels good. I'll swap that out. Adductors is a tricky thing that's very easily hurt, especially if you're doing direct work for adductors. Like again, any youngsters that are doing like direct adductor work, just take it easy on the weight, focus on contraction because you can strain an adductor so easy, especially on deadlifts too. So, but again, like you said, substituting. If you had to substitute leg press for leg extension for a week, you're not going to lose muscle. Volume equates for the most part. So just make sure you're doing the same volume for leg extensions or maybe a little more that you were doing on leg press, and you're going to be fine. So like things like that, they don't happen all the time, but when they do, I just know what to do and it's okay. You're not going to lose anything. What you will do if you push it too hard, if you tear your adductor, well, now you're out of training legs for months. That will, oh, you're going to lose muscle mass for sure. So staving off big injuries is the key when you have like minor things. My most major injury was when I was wrestling, actually. I herniated 3 discs in my lower back, and that's been around since I'm like 16. That'll flare up from time to time, and that's the most quote unquote debilitating, even though it's not debilitating. But then I need to slow things down. If it gets real bad, I might need to take out deadlifts or squats, put in leg extensions and leg curls, or if I can do it, maybe like a back extension or like a rear elevated split squat. Again, I'm just substituting these things. Thankfully, I haven't really had any flare ups there because I'm like very careful, and I also built up my glutes and my core a lot, which protects me, and I actually know how to use a belt. A belt is another good tool, not necessarily to rely on, but it can help you, especially when using heavy loads.
So you're still doing heavy deadlifts, Gary?
Heavier than I've ever done.
Where are you at with your deadlifts, given your past history? Just to give some perspective and motivation. But where are you at, like in terms of load? Like what would you say the loads you're working with at this point?
Yeah, so I mean, I get a lot of questions, especially on my YouTube, because people know I have herniated discs. I have 3 herniated discs in my lumbar. At the time when I re-injured it, which was during my 2018 prep, actually, I had to push off my prep a little while because I re-injured my back. The doctor was like, "You can't lift heavy again. Like you basically have all the spinal fluid in your canal right now. They're fully herniated. Yeah, I don't foresee you deadlifting or squatting heavy weights ever again. You need to take it easy." I didn't like that actually at all. I went right to a good physical therapist. He got me moving again. I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks after that, by the way. It was definitely a serious, you don't even call it flare up. It just basically herniated my discs more. And this happened on a good form set of squats. Like, I don't know if I could have done anything better during this set, but I just felt fireworks in my lower back coming out of the hole on a squat. And I was like, yeah, I definitely really hurt myself further. So yeah, he was like, listen, you can't deadlift heavy, squat heavy, train heavy. It took me about 6 weeks to get back into training. I did only isolation exercises. I slowly implemented like squats and deadlifts. And when I did, it was very light. So it took me like 6 months to kind of get back to baseline, but I did get back to baseline. I was using all the same weights. Back then, I was probably only deadlifting, and we're talking about Romanian deadlifts, maybe like 300 for 6. And now I'm doing like 415 for 6.
Okay, so you worked your
That's a
way
good
back up.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it originally happened wrestling, and then you kind of retweaked it squatting, basically.
Oh yeah.
It's good to hear these types of things for people who could be going through something, right? Well, listening to the podcast. So again, it's just gotta keep it positive and not quit, basically. As simple as that sounds, but it's true, right?
Yeah, I think to almost expect things like this to happen is healthy. Because if you
Mm.
really think that everything's going to go perfect, that you're in for some serious mental issues there, because life isn't perfect and sports even more so. Because we're putting our body through a lot, especially, in a sport where you're trying to excel at a high rate. You're putting your body through trauma. There's really no other way to put it. So some things are going to kind of like break here and there. That's just the
Yeah.
nature of it. So understanding that it's part of the game and you might move back this month, but 4 months from now, you're going to be ahead of where you were before. Like you said, it's the 2 steps back, 3 steps forward. Eventually, you're just going to continue to progress. You're not going to stay in that one spot. So keeping that in mind is huge.
Amazing. Yeah, the trend goes up, basically.
Yes.
But understanding that there's going to be, how do you say it? Downfalls along the way, basically, right? Setbacks, if you will, right? So you mentioned that you will train RPE 10, like you'll take sets to failure. How does that look? So you mentioned you have like a progression model where you'll start a week off with maybe RPE 6 or 7 at the beginning of the mesocycle, and then you'll progress throughout the weeks closer to failure, higher volumes. Am I understanding that correctly, Gary?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So